All right, guys, got some breaking news I wanted to share with you. So, obviously, there hasn't been a show yet this week, taking a little Christmas break here, but I'll be back in the studio next week. There's also no Crystal Kyle and Friends this week, but I wanted to come to you here with something that really can't wait, or it shouldn't wait. We have some huge news that came out the other day. So, it's now confirmed that Israel killed the Iranian general Saeed Razi Mousavi, who's part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They killed him in Syria. So they bombed Damascus. So that's a provocation on two fronts. Number one, that you're bombing Syria at all. Number two, that you're bombing a top Iranian commander in Syria. So we've been talking about this conflict spiraling out of control for a while, but now it's here. It's no longer a theoretical thing. It now is out of control, and you have potentially Iran entering. Lord only knows what Syria will do. Of course, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon that have been involved to some extent. They might get involved more. In fact, it's been ramped up a little bit recently. So this is huge, huge news, a major provocation from Israel. So, of course, Iran is not taking it well. They've basically come out and said, yeah, we're gonna retaliate. We're gonna retaliate. You have an official Iran statement here where Mohammed Bagheri, the chief of staff of the armed forces, said, quote, Israel is a festering tumor in the Islamic world. So tensions ramping up across the board. And of course, this is on top of what Israel is continuing to do in Gaza. In fact, if anything, it's only gotten more barbaric and more savage, and they've only ramped up the indiscriminate bombings and atrocities since I last spoke to you. I mean, I feel like I say that every single time we do a segment, but it's as real as a heart attack. So we also have at the same time, this coming out of Reuters, that Iran is accelerating uranium enrichment at the moment. Now, I don't know how to feel about this because on the one hand, this might just be a story running in U.S. media where now the U.S. has laid some groundwork where if we go to war with Iran, we'll turn around and say, well, we had to do it. They were enriching their uranium. So that's possible. It's also possible they're genuinely enriching uranium because they want to provide some sort of deterrent, not only to the U.S., but more importantly, even to Israel, where they say, hey, you can't come after us because we have mutually assured destruction now because we have the bomb. But either way, this is not pretty. So again, I don't know if the story is real and believable, or believable, I should say. There's a number of reasons why we might be learning about this at this exact moment. So we also have a massive cyber attack that hit Israel's critical infrastructure. There were power outages reported in a number of places in Israel. Of course, the speculation is that this was potentially retaliation from Iran. But as far as I know, I think that they got the power back on relatively quickly. So just to give you guys an update real quick on the numbers in Gaza, they are horrendous. So we have over 28,000 that are killed. I should be clear, this came out on December 23rd. I haven't seen an update from Euromed Monitor since then, but it's about 28,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza, and almost 26,000 of them are civilians. This includes people who have been under the rubble for an extended period of time. They're presumed to be dead. We have over 11,000 children have now been killed. We're almost at 55,000 people who are injured. And I've seen a couple reports that now the number of journalists who have been killed by Israel is over 100. And of course, in many instances, these were targeted assassinations. You even have reports of like family members of Al Jazeera journalists who were killed. There's 1.9 million people who are now displaced, and that's out of 2.3 million people total in Gaza. As the head of the UN said, there literally is no safe place in Gaza. We've gone over the numbers before of different hospitals and schools and mosques and churches that have been bombed relentlessly. So we also have this that I wanted to share with you. There were some reports that the Houthi rebels, and we all know the Yemeni Houthis jumped into this conflict to fight back against Israel very early on. And they sent some drones a couple of times, but more importantly, they've been active on the sea, and they've been stopping ships from going to Israel. So Israel's insurance rate for their ships has shot up tremendously, and trade has plummeted going to Israel. Some companies say we're not going to go there anymore. But apparently the U.S. reached out to the Houthis, and they were trying to make a deal with them to get them to stop doing this. But the Houthis rejected all of their offers and effectively said, piss off. We're going to do this because we think it's the right thing to do. The U.S. military shot down 12 more drones and 5 missiles near Yemen. So in other ways now, the U.S. is making sure to try to crack down on Yemen. You can only hope that they don't escalate further to the point where they're bombing Sana'a and Houthi-held regions in Yemen. But this is where we are now. And in fact, the U.S. is bombing somewhere else, which I'm going to get to in just a minute here. So there's new footage that came out of IDF soldiers holding Palestinians captive and stripping them down to their underwear yet again and sitting them down in the middle of an empty football field in Gaza. You have field executions happening. The Israeli army allegedly executed 137 Palestinian citizens in Gaza. Again, the pattern here is strip them down to their underwear, humiliate them. There's even videos where it's literal children who are stripped down to their underwear and humiliated as well. There was a massive Christmas Eve massacre that happened the other day where it's at least 80 civilians who were killed in one strike. This is in the Maghazi refugee camp. The pictures coming out of there are absolutely horrible. According to Politico, you have at least 60 killed in central Gaza in one of the war's deadliest strikes. Again, that's 60 in one strike. One of these stories that went viral is also, and this is in Haaretz, one of Israel's top newspapers, a mentally disabled Palestinian who was carrying a bag of lollipops was shot by Israel. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, the barbarity and the savagery is absolutely off the charts. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. This is the most barbaric stuff I've seen literally since, World War II. I'm very critical of the U.S.'s war on terror and Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo and all those atrocities, but the scale and the scope of this is so much more in such a short time frame. So we also have the IDF locked down northern Israel because there was fighting going on there with Hezbollah. So there's been increased Hezbollah attacks, including troop confrontations and airstrikes and tank shelling, and it prompted the IDF to impose a lockdown on the communities there in places like Liman, Batz, and Rosh Hankara. It's the Times of Israel that's reporting this. So this is, we're now starting to see some consequences for Israel. I mean, there's no proportionality because what Israel is doing to Gaza is just off the charts. But now, on top of the Yemen's Houthis trying to fight back, you also have Hezbollah getting a little more involved. Now, by the way, early on in the conflict, the U.S. told Israel if Hezbollah gets involved, we will attack Hezbollah on your behalf. So, in a quite direct way, the U.S. is being dragged in to a bigger conflict here. And we have Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. He came out and he said that at Biden's direction, the U.S. military conducted airstrikes on 3 facilities used by Kataib Hezbollah, and their affiliated groups in Iraq. So it's basically like a Shia militia that's affiliated with Hezbollah that's in Iraq. And the U.S. has now been directly bombing some of them, and potentially even in Syria as well. So again, every time we come out here, we say, hey guys, it's gotten worse. Hey guys, everything's escalated. But, we mean it, right? Like, this is exactly what's happening. All we're doing here is following the news, and the conclusions are slapping you across the face. So a new poll came out, and 83% of Israelis support the expulsion of Gaza's population under the label voluntary migration. And it's 68% that are, quote, extremely supportive of voluntary migration. So in other words, to break that down into layman's terms, that's 83% who support the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and 68% who extremely support the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. So this goes right in line with that poll that came out earlier in the conflict where it was less than 2% of Israelis thought the IDF was using too much force. I think it was like 1.6% that said they're using too much force. Look, you don't like to generalize, but at the same time, numbers are numbers. And this is some sick stuff that we're seeing coming out of this place. Totally broken, bloodthirsty society, if I'm being honest with you. And look, if the polls change, I would tell you that. But they haven't changed. Now, to be fair, this is very similar to the U.S. after 9/11. We had a period of mania and hysteria and bloodlust in this country where we were like, I don't know, just revenge, retaliation, retribution. But they are currently in the midst of that, despite the fact that you have devastating videos and pictures and images coming out of the war crimes being committed by the IDF. So just to put this in perspective for you, the Jerusalem Post, there was an opinion piece that was run there. This is the headline. Listen to this. Why moving to the Sinai Peninsula is the solution for Gaza's Palestinians. So they should just rename this and be straightforward and say, opinion piece, we should do ethnic cleansing. because that's what this is. And again, this is floated very mainstream position there. Honestly, if I'm being serious, this is like the left flank position. Why? Because the right flank position is like nuke Gaza, or let's just openly call for genocide and say there are no civilians in Gaza. So if anything, the reason why they run with this is because they think, what? I'm being liberal. I'm being moderate. What are you talking about? So now think of everything I just told you, and then put that together with this fact from the Times of Israel. 244 U.S. cargo planes and 20 ships deliver over 10,000 tons of military equipment to Israel. So everything I just told you, it's not like the U.S. doesn't know this. Oh, they know this. And they might do some more finger wagging in Netanyahu where they say, sir, bomb more nicely, please. Bomb more humanitarianly. But at the end of the day, they keep giving the green light. They keep shipping the weapons. And you know what? The blood is definitely on Joe Biden's hands as well as Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the chief of communications for Euromed Monitor, the human rights group, he tweeted about how in North Gaza, the IDF did a limited pullout in an area of Beit Hanun. I know I'm mispronouncing that, but that's I'm trying. And apparently there are decomposed bodies of Gazans that are right out there in the open, in the street, at the city entrance. And it's as bad as it gets. I mean, in some instances, rotten flesh. In other instances, it's gotten to the point where they are just literally skeletons laying there. And, look, at this point, it's horrible to say, but par for the course. It's par for the course. I mean, I don't know how many more images and pictures have to come out before everybody could be honest with themselves and just say it like it is. That what we're looking at is a Nazi-level atrocity against Palestinians. Now, I'll also share this fact with you because, again, it shows how broken the spectrum is there, how far right to the spectrum is there. I think he's a former Knesset member and general, Yair Golan. And this guy's viewed as like a leftist hero in Israel. And he came out the other day and said, quote, we should tell them, talking to Palestinians or Gazans, listen, until they're released, talking about the hostages, from our side, you will starve to death. This is completely legitimate. So there's your leftist hero. Come get your leftist hero, Israel. Now, a lot of these atrocities, they're so over the top, they're so extreme, they've even made it they've even cracked through the wall of Western media propaganda where they try to spin everything as positive as possible for Israel. CNN headline here, doctors accuse Israeli troops of desecrating bodies and shooting civilians at hospital, Israel says was Hamas command center. Now here's a quote from it. Quote, the soldiers dug up the graves this morning and dragged the bodies with bulldozers, then crushed the bodies with the bulldozers, said the hospital's head of pediatric services, Hassam Abu Safaya, in a phone interview on Saturday. I've never seen such a thing before. So, we've given you guys the stories before where there's like, they will literally steal the organs from dead Palestinians. This is an instance of we've had the field executions, we've had people being killed by bulldozers. They literally dug up graves and then ran over the dead bodies with bulldozers. I mean, it's just gratuitous, right? I saw a video of Israelis who were pissing on the dead bodies of Palestinians. Again, I don't know what's going to shake people out of their complacency. To be fair, every human rights group, every international group in the country, the entire United Nations, with the exception of the U.S. and Israel and like Micronesia, the cucked, servant states, every single one is saying the same thing. Stop this. Stop it now. This is ridiculous. This has gone way too far. This is unacceptable. But Joe Biden and Netanyahu stand there alone together and smugly assured of how righteous they are despite their own brutality and war crimes. So at the end here, I'll leave you with this. Apparently, Pope Francis gave a very based sermon the other day during Christmas Eve Mass. Remember, he has repeatedly called what Israel is doing terrorism. He's using the word terrorism, and he's 100% correct to do that. But here we have, quote, tonight, our hearts are in Bethlehem. Pope Francis appeals for peace during Christmas Eve Mass as he decries, quote, the futile logic of war as conflict rages on in Gaza. So those are the updates I have for you guys right now. Look, to put it as simply as possible, unless Benjamin Netanyahu and every top Israeli general is arrested and brought to the International Criminal Court and sentenced to life in prison. Unless that happens, the inescapable conclusion, as I've told you guys before, is international law does not exist. Human rights do not exist. It's just not real. There was a time where you could say, hey, international law is real, but sometimes it's not fairly applied and all that. No, we're way, way beyond that. We're at the point where it is completely and utterly fake, and the UN will have to go the same path as the League of Nations, where it no longer exists. We need to replace it with a new body, because if we can't uphold the basic law and humanity in the face of these atrocities, then what are we even doing here? There's no point in even pretending. We haven't evolved a second beyond the medieval times. I mean, they're literally doing a siege. That's some medieval stuff right there. We haven't evolved a second beyond World War II and that brutality. It's all happening right in front of our face. I've never seen anything like it before. Hopefully I'll never see anything like it again. But you better lock up the sons of bitches who are responsible for this. And you know what? When somebody who's the head of the Catholic Church, an organization that's known for mass pedophilia, when they are the voice of reason, you know we've gone way, 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 way off track.